In 1990, Judith Butler's book Gender Trouble, Feminism and the Subversion of Identity was published. The work was influenced by the writings of postmodern French philosopher Jacques Derrida, who saw binary oppositions as hierarchical, with one pole of the binary oppressing the other. Butler coined the term heterosexual matrix and claimed that within society, boys are expected to be masculine and sexually attracted to girls, and girls are expected to be feminine and sexually attracted to boys. In the book, she quotes philosopher Monique Wittig. The category of sex is a name that enslaves. The naming of sex is an act of domination and compulsion. The straight mind, evident in the discourses of the human sciences, oppress all of us, lesbians, women, and homosexual men. To undermine this matrix, she proposes breaking the gender binary by changing discourse to downplay the significance of biological sex and elevate the significance of a gender identity. Now, up until recently, the word gender commonly had two definitions in relation to humans. Number one, as a synonym for sex, a biological definition, which has been in use since the 18th century. Number two, as the social expectations of the roles and behaviours based on someone's sex, a sociological definition. Butler, drawing on the work of psychiatrist Robert Stoller with transvestite and transsexual clients, proposed a new definition, an identity, a psychological definition. As it cannot be understood what is meant by the word gender if it is both a synonym for sex and an identity, the biological definition is to be replaced. As Butler states, politically securing greater freedoms for women requires that we rethink the category of women to include those new possibilities. The historical meaning of gender can change as its norms are reenacted, refused, or recreated. Trans-identified male Rene Jacks explains the scientific background to the use of this term.
John Money was an Australian from Wellington, and he came up here and he was doing research. He was the first doctor who really looked at this condition scientifically. In 1955, he wrote a paper identifying gender as a concept to convey this confusion he saw in his patients. 14 years later, Harry Benjamin wrote The Transsexual Phenomena, in which he extrapolated and did a nice little chart. He loved charts. Which showed the range of gender. Then the following year, Robert Jesse Stoller wrote his book, Sex and Gender. And Benjamin was too old school. He came from Germany. He was Jewish. English was not his first language. Robert Jesse Stoller was a true American scientist, and his lingo resonated with the American society. So when he wrote his second book, The Transsexual Phenomena, in which he said, gender is a range of things and a rainbow, it caught on in the lay person. It caught on, and now we believe that gender can be separate from anatomy. There has been no scientific research, hard science, that indicates anything like that.
Butler's book was extraordinarily influential. In 1993, gender studies professor Debbie Epstein, in a book review, argued that these ideas be incorporated into the teaching of sexuality within the curriculum. Epstein would go on to work at Cardiff University. In 1995, the Fourth World Conference on Women in Beijing instructed governments to support and develop gender studies and research at all levels of education, especially at the postgraduate level of academic institutions, and apply them in the development of curricula, including university curricula, textbooks and teaching aids, and in teacher training. The Gender Studies Department at Cardiff University references Judith Butler. Their website states, It has traditionally been said that while sex is biological, one is male or female, gender is social and cultural. But recent theorists, following Judith Butler and including some of our members, see biological sex and gender as inextricably mixed and both, in some senses at least, culturally constructed and performative. These ideas have had a massive influence on the minds of the first generation of young people brought up on the internet and smartphones.
So Tumblr identity politics emphasized emotional fragility, and any challenge to these micro-identities, no matter how honest or sincere, was met with outrage. This was also the time that trigger warnings and safe spaces became very popular in universities. You might remember phrases like check your privilege and do better. It all came out of this time. And now many people might be thinking that these ideas aren't new. They're from academia, particularly gender studies departments, and you'd be right. But these ideas were made real and concrete on Tumblr. Teenage girls are not particularly good at nuance or philosophy or anything else because they're kids. So the complex theories laid out in Butler became really crude and simplified. Performing a gender meant literally being that gender in every sense, regardless of biological sex, sexuality, perception, appearance, anything else.
Butler's theories may have remained popular in postmodernist departments of universities, but the reason why gender identity ideology is so popular today and embedded in the third sector is because teenagers took their ideas and ran with them.
The Welsh Government mandate that children are taught that gender is not a synonym for sex, but an identity. Professor Emma Reynolds from Cardiff University, the architect of the RSC Code and Guidance, has also produced a resource called The Gender to be used in Welsh schools that tells children that they have a right to a gender identity, encourages children to get beyond the binary, and links to a resource that explains how children can understand their gender. Now, changing the definition of words for political reasons does not change material reality, but it does impact on people's perception of reality, and it has no doubt contributed to the massive rise in the number of young people seeking to medically change their bodies. What is being pushed is an ideology, and despite this being explained repeatedly, Welsh Labour politicians seem incapable of understanding it. On the 18th of March 2024, Stephen Doughty MP, Labour parliamentary candidate for Cardiff South and Penarth, replied to a contribution by Elliot Coburn in a parliamentary debate on LGBT inclusive education. He stated, "The honorary member is giving a characteristically powerful and important speech. I too have seen myths going around in my own constituency in Wales about what is allegedly being taught in schools, and they are simply not borne out by the facts. Does he agree that the important thing is for parents, or indeed anybody else, to speak with schools? My schools have been working with families and across school clusters to ensure that parents are involved and understand what is going on. Of course, parents can also often access the information online. For example, the Welsh Government's curriculum is there for everybody to read online. It is important to base discussions on the facts, not on the myths that are circulating." Doughty is a unicorn member of Pop and Olly, and Pop and Olly books have been sent to local schools in his name.
Gender identity. So gender identity is someone's internal sense of being male, female, neither of these, both, or another gender or genders. Gender identity is basically what you just know that you truly are, because you can just feel it. For me, Olly that is, my gender identity is male. Mostly. Everyone has a gender identity, including you.
Catherine Fuchs is the Labour parliamentary candidate for Monmouth. For 6 years, she was Director of Women Equality Network Wales. In 2018, she, along with representatives from other women's organisations in Wales, issued a statement on the proposed reform of the Gender Recognition Act. 1. Women Equality Network Wales, Chwarae, Women Connect First and Welsh Women's Aid all welcome the opening of the consultation on the reform of the Gender Recognition Act. We recognise the need to reform the way trans people can change their birth certificates to make it a more accessible and respectful process. 2. We support trans women. Our organisations and our work are fully inclusive of trans women. In our recent joint manifesto for equality for women and girls, we called for greater recognition of the multiple forms of discrimination and abuse experienced by trans women as women. Women-only spaces should be open to all women, including trans women, and women's safety, including trans women's safety, within the criminal justice system, in services and in the community, must be prioritised. Some people have concerns. Women's Rights Network Wales tweeted, UK Labour candidate Catherine Fuchs wants your vote in Monmouthshire. Can she be trusted with women's and girls' rights and single-sex spaces? A woman asked. After much bluster, contact was promised. She is still waiting. Fuchs is a great supporter of Professor Emma Reynolds' work and the Agenda resource.
The culture could be changed by going into schools and really encouraging, exploring gender, healthy relationships, sexism, feminism, and all these things. It's something that we work with Professor Emma Reynolds at Cardiff University on, going to schools with our Agenda programme.
Fuchs is also a signatory to the Stand with Trans campaign, who have a definition of transphobia. Transphobic behaviour can come in many different forms, including, but not limited to, deliberate and or repeated misgendering or incorrect use of pronouns, including when a person is not present. Propagating ideas, concepts and misinformation harmful to trans people and which erase and ignore trans history, such as trans as an ideology or contagion. Fuchs evidently believes that the huge rise in young people, particularly girls, identifying as trans is not a social contagion. Professor Reynolds has come out as non-binary. She has changed her name to EJ and her pronouns to they, their. She's not had her breasts amputated, unlike the daughter of Stephen Kinnock, Labour parliamentary candidate for Aberavon. As reported in the Daily Mail, his daughter, a 22-year-old who changed her name to Milo from Camilla, said, "It just felt right to me, and it's really given me a lot of freedom." Jackie Jones is the Labour parliamentary candidate for Ceredigion Preseli and a former professor of law. She is interested in promoting CEDAW, the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, adopted in 1979 by the United Nations General Assembly.
CEDAW is the United Nations Convention to Eliminate All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, signed and ratified by our dear Margaret Thatcher, no, not so dear, sorry, I better scrap that out of the memory, in her government in the 80s. I know councillors in this chambers have all read in full CEDAW, and they understand the significance, but let me just remind you of a few phrases from it. CEDAW covers both the private and public sectors. It provides a blueprint of actions for governments, including our own here in Cardiff. This is what we should do in order to secure equality, whether it be in the media, schools, public highways or at home. It prescribes substantive equality, going beyond mere equality of opportunity, striving for equity in all aspects of life. That is the core of this motion. The motion highlights certain actions and integrates a gender lens into the Council decision-making, thus reminding us of our public sector duty of ensuring we take account or have due regard, not just of gender, but all protected characteristics in the decision-making processes, in this chamber, in the Cabinet, and across our services.
Gender is not a protected characteristic under the Equality Act. She is the author of a report written for Women Equality Network Wales. She wrote, Education. The Donaldson Review recommended a major shake-up in education for Wales, which provides a real opportunity to improve the current curriculum. All schools need to adopt a whole education approach to violence against women, human rights and politics education, including CEDAW. Where already available, this should use existing guidance, such as whole education approach, good practice guidance, and resource toolkit, and the agenda resource. However, there's insufficient funding to roll these out across Wales. The report was endorsed by, among others, Professor Reynolds and Stonewall. Jones believes that trans rights are not incompatible with women's rights. In October 2021, the Government Equalities Office published a report by a research team from Coventry University, who were commissioned to undertake a study of the evidence of conversion therapy. Included in the definition of conversion therapy were talking therapies. Sex Matters reported on the study. After an exhaustive survey of the academic literature, all the Coventry University team could find was a question in a self-selected survey carried out by a US transgender advocacy organisation, an academic study which involved an online survey who watched a video clip, and a survey of academic literature which found papers covering 10 individual cases. The Coventry University team also interviewed 4 individual trans people and 2 who identified as non-binary. One of the studies included in that survey of academic literature was by the leading psychologist specialising in gender dysphoria, Professor Ken Zucker, involving 7 children under 10 given open-ended play psychotherapy. The result was that a majority desisted in their cross-sex identities. This is what is viewed as conversion therapy in this study. Nevertheless, many Welsh Labour MPs are supporting a trans-inclusive ban on conversion therapy. These include Stephen Doughty, Nia Griffith, Alex Davies-Jones, the Labour parliamentary candidate for Pontypridd, and Anna McMorrin, the Labour parliamentary candidate for Cardiff North. In a blog post from April 2022, McMorrin wrote, I am appalled at the UK government's flip-flopping on LGBT plus equality. After abandoning its promise to outlaw the outdated practice recently, it has now said it will only ban conversion therapy for gay or bisexual people, but not trans people. This move shows the Conservative government's indifference to the very real threats that exist to the LGBT plus community and a clear lack of commitment to equality. The UK government committed to banning conversion therapy in England and Wales in 2018, yet nearly 4 years have passed and there is still nothing in place to ban therapy that seeks to change or suppress someone's sexuality or gender identity. Conversion therapy should have been banned a long time ago. The Conservatives have once again broken its promises and have continued to look the other way, allowing this dangerous practice to continue. I am proud that in Wales our Welsh Labour government is seeking urgent legal advice on the impact of the UK government's decision and will seek the devolution of any necessary additional powers required to see this through. Only Labour governments can be trusted to deliver on LGBT plus equality. Not everyone agrees. In her final report, Dr. Hilary Cass wrote, the role of psychological therapies in supporting children and young people with gender incongruence or distress has been overshadowed by an unhelpfully polarised debate around conversion practices. Terms such as affirmative and exploratory approaches have been weaponised to the extent that it is difficult to find any neutral terminology. This has given the impression that a young person can either have therapeutic interventions or a medical pathway. Whilst the review's terms of reference do not include consideration of the proposed legislation to ban conversion practices, it believes that no LGBTQ+ group should be subjected to conversion practice. It also maintains the position that children and young people with gender dysphoria may have a range of complex psychosocial challenges and or mental health problems impacting on their gender-related distress. Exploration of these issues is essential to provide diagnosis, clinical support and appropriate intervention. The intent of psychological intervention is not to change the person's perception of who they are, but to work with them to explore their concerns and experience and help alleviate their distress, regardless of whether they pursue a medical pathway or not. It is harmful to equate this approach to conversion therapy, as it may prevent young people from getting the emotional support they deserve. In May 2024, McMorrin campaigned for Kanishka Narayan in the Vale of Glamorgan constituency, along with Stephen Doughty, David Lammy, former Shadow Foreign Secretary and Cardiff Labour students. Lammy had previously criticised fellow Labour MP Rosie Duffield for liking a post that stated that only women have a cervix.
Is it transphobic to say only women have a cervix, David?
I don't know if it's transphobic, but it's not accurate, Nick. I mean, obviously, it's probably the case that only that trans women don't have ovaries, but a cervix, I understand, is something that you can have following various procedures and hormone treatment and all the rest of it.
Despite a statement issued from the United Nations Special Rapporteur on Violence Against Women and Girls, Reem Al-Salem, that the implementation of the CAS report is key to protecting girls from serious harm, Cardiff Labour students reposted a tweet from university Labour clubs. We fully condemn the response of the Shadow Cabinet to the release of the CAS review of transgender healthcare and the welcoming of its findings by the Shadow Health and Social Care Secretary Wes Streeting. The review is not science, it is an abject danger to the lives of young trans people. In conducting this review, trans people and qualified allies were completely excluded from the governance board, and important evidence was ignored. Specifically, all studies conducted in the last 2 years, and any that are not double-blind. As such, the review's recommendations will threaten Gaelic competence and access to transgender healthcare for consenting individuals. The CAS review will categorically put the rights of trans people at risk. In October 2023, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak made a speech at the Conservative Party conference.
And it also shouldn't be controversial for parents to know what their children are being taught in school about relationships. Patients should know when hospitals are talking about men or women. And we shouldn't get bullied. And we shouldn't get bullied into believing that people can be any sex they want to be. They can't. A man is a man and a woman is a woman. That's just common sense.
His remarks were not well received by Merthyr Pride, who organised a rally in response in support of trans people. Labour parliamentary candidate for Merthyr and Aberdare, Gerald Jones, made his views known in Parliament.
Thank my friend for giving way and obviously congratulating him on securing this important debate. It comes at a time as we've seen significant rise in hate crimes against the LGBTQ+ community. I stood with the trans community in Merthyr Tydfil with Merthyr Pride last week at a rally. To mention the figures in his police force, which is the same as mine, would you agree with me that the particularly venomous comments from the Prime Minister, Home Secretary and other senior Tories does nothing to support these figures and will increase the problem further?
Well, I indeed endorse what he said and welcome the work of Merthyr Pride. I think it was the first in Merthyr to take place. Really amazing work done by that organisation.
Queer theorists believe that by changing language, they can change reality. As Jacques Derrida famously quoted, "There is nothing outside the text." Sex realists believe that by changing language, you don't change material reality, but by redefining the word gender as a subjective feeling, an identity, rather than as an objective truth, a synonym for sex, you will impact on people's psychology, particularly the psychology of gender non-conforming young people. Welsh Labour politicians steadfastly refuse to engage with this argument. Instead, they draw parallels with Section 28 and the prohibition on the promotion of homosexuality, no more so than Nia Griffith, Labour Party candidate for Llanelli.
Go back in history for a moment. This week we saw the 20th anniversary of repealing of Section 28, and those of you who are as ancient as I am may remember that Section 28 was a piece of legislation brought in to try to curtail discussion of LGBTQ issues in schools. I was a teacher at the time in a same-sex relationship, and obviously it was a real issue for us that not only could we not talk about things when children raised them, but obviously we ourselves were at risk of dismissal. So we've come a very, very, very long way, and I pay huge tribute to the people who were brave enough to really speak up at that time when it was difficult, and we got that legislation repealed back in 2003, thank goodness. But as we all know, there's lots and lots still to do, and particularly with the rise of anti-trans rhetoric, and particularly the rise in hate crime across the board towards LGBTQ plus people. So it's really important that we keep flying the flag, and that we keep speaking out, and that we make sure that we do challenge when people say things that are inappropriate, that we do fight back, and that we do stand up for all of our comrades in the LGBTQ plus community. And I pay tribute to all those who are doing so and our allies who stand with us. Thank you.
In a parliamentary debate in December 2023, Labour parliamentary candidate for the Rhondda, Chris Bryant, claimed that he felt less safe after a comment from the Minister for Women and Equality's Kemi Badenoch that Stonewall do not make the law in this country. Stonewall had been pressing for gender identity to be recognised as a protected characteristic instead of gender reassignment, and have been teaching businesses that the most inclusive organisations go above and beyond the law. The head of Trans Inclusion, Kieran Medcalf, has stated, "Bodies are not inherently male or female. They're just their bodies." Bryant was concerned about Badenoch's comments.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I will say this as gently as I can. I feel today, as a gay man, less safe than I did 3 years or 5 years ago. Why? Sometimes because of the rhetoric that is used, including by herself, in the public debate. I'm afraid we're not able to have a debate. Let's have a debate. I'll be very happy to debate. I'm just making that point, that many of us feel less safe today, and when people over there cheer, as they just did, it chills me to the bone. It genuinely does. So I ask her two very simple questions. First of all, how many people does she think today's decision will affect? Precise number. And secondly, she will know that there are lots of people in the UK who have entered into same-sex civil partnerships and marriages who would like those to be recognised in other countries around the world so that they can live their lives wherever that may be. What has she done since she's been in power to make sure that more countries recognise those same-sex civil partnerships and marriages?
Madam Deputy Speaker, I will also speak very gently to the honourable gentleman. He says that my rhetoric chills him to the bone. I would be really keen to hear exactly what it is I have said in this statement or previously that is so chilling. But I would tell him what chilled me. In May 2021, against official advice, I will stress that officials said you should not have this meeting. I met a young lady called Kira Bell. She was a lesbian, She was a lesbian who told me the horrific experience that she had in the Tavistock clinic. It was an eye-opening experience. I know that the member for Kirkcaldy and Cowdenbeath talked about transing away the gay in his speech in Westminster Hall debate. We are seeing, I would say, almost an epidemic of young gay children being told that they are trans and being put on a medical pathway for irreversible decisions, and they are regretting it. That is what I'm doing for young LGBT children. I am making sure that young people do not find themselves sterilized because they are being exploited by people who do not understand what these issues are. And I am saying this on the advice of clinicians, I'm saying this on the advice of academics. There are clinicians from the Tavistock who have been whistleblowing, talking about what these issues are. The Honourable Man tells me that he is traumatized. We are traumatized by what is happening to young children, and we are not going to run away from this issue any longer.
Labour are predicted to win 26 out of 32 seats in Wales at the general election.